Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to House Party 5v5. It's the minor league playoffs here today. In this first best of three, we've got Dynamic Strangers over in the blue versus YouTubers Are Us on the red. I'm Captain Flowers. I'll be handling the play-by-play for all three potential matches today, joined for all three potential matches by Fury Golem on the color commentary. Fury, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty darn good. This should be a good matchup. We are looking at a very, very serious lineup of solo queue ranks over here on the right side. In addition to the fact that they do have the superior ranking in this minor league setup. But the guys over on the other side are no slouch. Dynamic Strangers, all of them very good players. They're up against a real serious challenge here, and hopefully they can pull out their best A game and really make not Dynamic Strangers, but YouTubers Are Us work for every inch.
Well, one thing that comes up every time you look at teams like this where the solo queue rankings are mismatched. Now, Dynamic Strangers are not a low-rated team. Most of their players are somewhere in Diamond or they're at least in High Platinum. But when you look over on the squad of YouTubers Are Us for this match they're playing right now, they've had a couple subs brought in for this occasion, one of which is in Master Tier, and one of which, I scoped him out doing a little bit of scouting there in the lobby while we were waiting, is number 27 on the Challenger ladder. So some very, very high ranks coming in for these subs that are showing up for YouTubers Are Us. But it's going to be interesting to see how well they work together as a team, because there's a very, very different dynamic, pun fully intended for this game, between playing League of Legends as a solo queue player and playing League of Legends in a pre-made fives team environment.
I have to admit, if I were fighting YouTubers and I saw that challenger on the other side, I would be thoroughly intimidated. That's just me. Hopefully, this other team, the Dynamic Strangers, they can not let that upset them. They can just go, okay, this is a game like any other. All we have to do is bring our best. And they have started off right away with Thresh, Zed, and Tom Kench bans on their side, with Soraka, Zac, and Dr. Mundo on the other. Some of these bans are a little unorthodox. I mean, the Zed, in particular, he hasn't been considered that competitive a pick for a long time. But on the other hand, if you're going to first pick Anivia, Zed would certainly be someone who you would like to get off the table.
I was going to say, if we want to talk unorthodox, if we want to talk unusual, let's talk first pick Flex Lock Anivia. Because this is a champion who you can kind of build an entire team around. You can really have a stall kind of team, a team that's great at stopping sieges, at pushing sieges, at just huge amounts of zone control with this champion. But at the same time, Anivia is a very archaic champion. It's a champion that has been around for a long, long time. It was around back in Season 1 and hasn't seen any real big changes since those times. So the kit is very, very old in that it's very, very simplistic. And the thing about that is when you don't have a lot of complex mechanisms to work with, when you were implemented into the game in a time where the game was much simpler, then there's a lot of abilities for these newer champions, these more complex champions with all these different dashes and abilities and combinations with their moves, to really outplay her. And it can be very difficult for Anivia to do what she needs to do if she's stuck into a very difficult lane matchup or just into a team composition that's able to address her and deal with her very well. Sivir is a champion who, being able to use that spell shield, can really effectively deal with Anivia with a lot of what she can do. You can either spell shield the stun to make it show she's not able to lock you down, or you can spell shield that icicle when it comes out, since that does compromise most of her burst.
That's true, but on the other side of it, when Sivir pops her ult, their entire team runs at you. That Anivia wall is super handy. If you're in any kind of choke point at all, bam, wall, Sivir ult. You're very happy right there, because that's a lot of what Sivir brings to her team. She has that ult, and it's so good at charging the enemy down. But if you can stop even a fraction of her team, that just means the other part of the team that does not get stopped by the wall is charging to their deaths alone.
We can see Jax and Lucian now locked for Dynamic Strangers. Lucian's a champion that we've been seeing a lot more of lately since the preseason changes. He's a lot better now that he's able to rush that Essence Reaver. He scales better into the late game as well. So two very short-range AD carries going to be showing up in this game. We don't have any of that long-range Jinx and Tristana type stuff we saw at Worlds. And then Jax going to be locked in into the top side. We know Ginsu's Rage Blade ascended the steps to overpowered them, and Jax has been one of the main champions who's been able to abuse that. So we're going to have to see how that plays out up against the LeBlanc and the Blitzcrank that we've seen locked in now on the side of the YouTubers Blitzcrank a champion that you don't see very often in actual organized competitive play, simply because if you don't get that miracle pull, if you don't start the fight off with a really great blitz hook, he's borderline completely useless.
That's true, but Blitzcrank, if he were more in the meta, would probably be considered, along as with Anivia being more in the meta, would probably be considered a direct counter to her. His ability to pull someone over the Anivia wall, if he can land his hook, means that you can actually turn that ability against Anivia, make her team pay for running that champion. And when Anivia is egged out, your team has to stand directly in front of her to protect her from the Blitzcrank grabs, because it's really hard to miss an immobilized champion. So Blitzcrank probably actually chosen as a direct counter to that. Even so, this is a bit of a strange lineup over here on the right-hand side. YouTubers are us running some fairly peculiar champions. I mean, none of these are really in meta anymore, except maybe Rek'Sai. Malphite has done okay in the meta right now, but he's not considered a big champion right now. And Jax, I would think, would be one of the last things he would want to go up against, because an auto-attacking, magic damage-dealing champ is probably the closest thing you're going to see to a counter to Malphite in lane.
Malphite actually does very well against Jax in most scenarios in lane. Jax isn't able to deal with him early on. The fact that Malphite has the passive shield helps him a lot in terms of multiple trades over the course of a longer period of time. It makes it so Jax isn't able to get too much damage down. And because of the way attack speed slows work in this game, not only does it slow down the amount of attacks you do per second, it slows down the animation of the attack. When Jax jumps on Malphite, as long as Flex Point is fast enough that as Jax initiates on him, he just slams the ground, it becomes very difficult for Jax to do that jump into empowered attack thing, because it's simply so difficult to get the entire animation to play to the point where the damage will actually come through. Jax's way that he starts trading with you is at level 6, you hit a minion twice, you prime the third hit of your ultimate, then you empower your leap strike, jump onto someone, and then slap them with that third hit from the ulti. It's very powerful, but when Malphite's able to slow your attack speed down so much, he gets the lantern half swung back, and then the player, like, a lot of times you'll see players just click away because they think the attack should have been done at that point. It makes it very awkward, it's incredibly clunky, and Flex Point should be able to do a lot to decrease Jax's damage output as this game goes on.
I have not seen the practical matchups with Jax. He has just not been in the games that I have played, so I do not know things like that. Thank you for enlightening me. Even so, when it gets to late game, Jax and Ginsu's, that is such a rough, nasty combo. That said, the Sejuani pickup, I am so not a fan of Sejuani. I feel like she lacks a whole lot in her kit. Her ult is fantastic, but everything else she brings is a little bit lackluster. And as a tank herself, her tank numbers are not that great. You have to build tanky items on Sejuani. Alternatively, there are people who build like straight AP Sejuani, and her burst is pretty darn strong. She can take champions apart, but that puts you in a position to get bursted out real fast.
Now, one thing unusual that we're seeing this game is the fact that Gordon Ramsay, who's normally, we often see him on the support of his team, he's on AD carry this time. We've got Gordon Ramsay rocking the Sivir and God tier Panth, who I'm still disappointed that he teased us with the Panth hover and then switched away to the champion that his account is not named after. We'll be supporting him on that Blitzcrank this game. There is a crazy amount of pick potential on the YouTubers R Us side. You've got LeBlanc, you've got Blitzcrank, you've got Rek'Sai, who's able to initiate and knock people up, and then of course you've got Flex Point able to actually bring the full initiation afterwards, but this team is definitely going to be looking for those pickoffs.
It's going to be an unusual game. All of these picks coming in pretty much not really something you see very often. I'm looking forward to seeing how all of these matchups interact. The LeBlanc versus the Anivia is probably fairly predictable in that Anivia has great wave clear, but if a LeBlanc can get close enough to land her combo, it's going to do a lot of damage to the squishiest champion in the game. All of the others, I am so interested to see. Obviously, Morgana's shield is going to do well against the Blitzcrank if Chris Brown Senpai can manage to get those off in time, but that's a really hard thing to do, just reflexes.
Chris Brown normally used to throw those fists out instead of having to block them, but we'll have to see if he's able to accomplish his goal as the lane goes on, and if Dynamic Strangers will be able to take down this stacked YouTubers R Us team. Stay right there, everybody. We're about to hop into this loading screen, and once we get back, we're going to be live for game number 1 with Dynamic Strangers versus YouTubers R Us. You don't want to miss it. Welcome, everybody, to House B 5v5. This is the playoffs for the minor league. I'm Captain Flowers here on play-by-play, joined by Fury Golem on color commentary. The teams are lined up and raring to go for this one. This is a best of 3 between Dynamic Strangers in the blue and YouTubers Are Us in the red. Game number 1, 0-0. This is where they prove what they've got and set the bar for the rest of the series that they're going to be playing here. Fury, how do you feel about this one?
Well, I did just do a little bit of research, and this fellow playing Jax here has 2 games on Jax, of which he's lost both of them. Whereas the Malphite has had 8 games, of which he's won 7 of them. So I retract my earlier statement about the Jax having good odds. I think his odds are terrible. However, if he can manage to pull this off, that would be a great numbers upset and a great way to start for the Strangers, the Dynamic Strangers. They are fighting a little bit of an uphill battle, but for all that, it doesn't seem to have intimidated them out of picking some very unusual champions. I really hope this Anivia pick works out for them.
We can see a lot of potential team fighting pools coming out for Dynamic Strangers. They've got the Sejuani ult, they've got the Morgana ult, the Culling's a wonderful tool for killing things that aren't minions these days. But meanwhile, on YouTubers, they've got such a huge amount of pick potential, especially if they can get this LeBlanc rolling the early game, which should be pretty easy considering he is a challenger level player. Those types of players tend to have a very, very high awareness of the game. They know where they should be, what they should be doing, and they're able to make the plays happen where they need to be happening. So if this LeBlanc can get going, paired with the Malphite, the Rek'Sai, the Blitzcrank, the Sivir, all these playmakers, they can definitely just run pick after pick and then get the rotations going to take the objectives afterwards.
They really can, and there's so much of that from both sides. Neither of these teams has skimped on the wave clear at all. And up in top lane, both of these champions have opted for the Corrupting Potion, which when it initially came out was not a very popular pickup, but more and more people have been taking it as an option to trade back and forth. And with both of them running it, it feels like a bit of a wash, like they might as well have not taken any items at all.
Pretty much that's what it comes down to, is just both guys take Corrupting Potion. It just ends up being a thing. Everybody spends all their charges, but you have to, because if you don't take Corrupting Potion, if you go with a greedier build like a Doran Shield as Lucian gets pulled into the bot side, God tier Panth able to find that hook nice and early. Gordon Ramsay follows it up. They don't actually blow a summoner spell, though. Good patience coming out from Apazan, knowing that he doesn't have to spin that to keep himself alive there. He saves the summoners for another day. He'll have them should he find himself in that position again, but they've got to be very, very aware of these pulls.
He's still even up in CS, but even up in CS is not good enough this early in the game when, oh, again!
Pull on to Apazan, but a very good black shield from Chris Brown Senpai, able to keep him from being knocked up into the air. God tier Panth zeroing in on these pulls. And this is what Blitzcrank's all about. If you can hit those, Blitzcrank is an amazing champion. If you miss those, he's a big old minion. God tier Panth is showing right now exactly why that champion can work. And if he can keep this up, it's going to be a huge asset for his team.
I think we all know that Blitzcrank is one of those champions. The champions that when he's on your team, he always performs poorly in solo queue, and when he's on the enemy team, he always does really, really well, and I have no idea why it works that way. However, in this particular case, when you can deliberately pick your own teammates, you have a much better chance of getting that good Pantheon, and he's really, I mean, if you can show up that strong, that early, once it heads to the team fight phase, you know he's going to be able to get those grabs and just make those fights happen early on, unless the Dynamic Strangers play very, very far away from him.
We saw the junglers get into a little bit of a scrap in the river there as Insanity takes some damage from Advantage in the mid lane, able to use that wall nice and early to grab some extra advantage damage. LeBlanc, but he's got to be careful now, making sure he doesn't bite off a little bit more than he can chew. Both of these mid laners do have the Ignite, but what Insanity has to be aware of course, is the fact that you've got to kill Anivia twice. Now, what I was talking about with the junglers is the fact that we're really looking for Captain Monk on this Rek'Sai to make an impact on this map before level 6. Sejuani's one of those champions that although she can gank pre-level 6, she generally would just rather farm up the ultimate because the ganks become that much more effective once you have it. Rek'Sai's level 6 does not make her ganks really any bit more effective. They allow her to position better to make the ganks happen when they need to, but actually executing the gank doesn't change whatsoever once she hits 6. I really want to see this Rek'Sai get into these lanes nice and early and have some sort of impact with it. She's able to find some damage onto Joestar here. Not an excessive amount, though. We'll be able to push him back a little bit, but it won't be enough to shove him out of lane.
It is enough to really turn this fight. I mean, Jax was taking the lead in this fight against Malphite. He was up a potion charge.
God Tier Panther with another pull onto Absent, another Black Shield being able to keep him safe from that knock up the binding in return, and God Tier Panther now takes a lot of damage, having to dodge that Boomerang Blade away from Gordon Ramsay, and it's Galzera bot side TP coming in for this blue team as well. Dynamic Strangers looking to be able to make a play nice and early. A strike from Jax. Gordon Ramsay brought very low. The shot's going to come out, and first blood goes him Joestar. 5 minutes into this game, and Dynamic Strangers are no strangers to early game rotation.
With Sejuani, particularly once you hit level 6, bot lane has got to be your primary target. Almost everything she does is AoE, which means when you gank bot lane, you're getting double your money. Oh, that grab!
The grabs that come out from God Tier Panther are absolutely crazy. However, App doesn't have the rest of his team there in time to keep everything exactly where it needs to be and bring that kill under their belts as well. Galzera taking a lot of damage from this dragon. Has to have Chris Brown Senpai rotate over and tank some of that up for him. Has to be careful of that AoE, and Galzera is going to be executed. This is a bit of an ambitious play coming out from Dynamic Strangers. They're going to have to back away from this one. They lose their jungler for nothing, really, but it's not really that much of a loss. It's not actually a kill for the enemy team. Nobody was in EXP range. However, it does open up for Flex Point and Captain Monk to be able to take this Rift Herald free of charge.
It's execution day, so close up against that Rift Herald. They do manage to pull it off, whereas Strangers do not with the Dragon, so that is definitely an advantage for YouTubers. However, they are down 2 kills now. Even so, they are even in gold, which is a pretty serious achievement from Straight Farm.
Insanity XXX finding the damage onto advantage, taking a lot in return, though. Those icicles are nothing to joke about. Anivia's dynamic changes a lot at level 6. Pre-level 6, Anivia doesn't do very much. She's able to throw those icicle orb things out at you to stun you if you try to go aggressively on her. She's able to throw the icicles out to grab a little bit more combo damage, but once she hits level 6, she's able to throw the icicle out and then drop the ult on you mid-icicle flight. And it creates this very, very powerful trading mechanism that's very hard to actually find any real counterplay to once you're in range of it, just because of the fact that it's so instant. It's targeted with that icicle, and it's very, very easy for Advantage to pile some real damage onto Insanity XXX, and Insanity has to respect the fact that that damage is there while still looking for those windows of his own opportunity.
Insanity XXX was a really good call into this Anivia. He's managed to bully her out a bit, get a 14 CS lead early on, and now that we've reached that point in the game where Anivia is just going to be pushing as hard as she possibly can, trying to deny CS, Insanity XXX still has abilities on that LeBlanc that will enable him to keep from having the wave pushed into his tower and losing CS. LeBlanc, one of the better champions for CSing under tower in the mid lane.
We can see Insanity deciding to go for the Athene's Unholy Grail as his first item. Normally not an item that you see rushed first on LeBlanc, but he is deciding that he needs that extra little bit of magic resist while still going for the 20% CDR with some AP on it as well, first item. So he's definitely respecting the Icicles. He's realizing that he can't just take all that upfront burst damage from Advantage, because remember, even if he can manage to kill Advantage faster, he's still got to be able to address and deal with the egg before he gets cleaned up by Galzera or someone else on this dynamic side.
As well, the Ignites. Both of these mid laners have opted for that more aggressive choice in lane. No extra teleports. In fact, there are just the usual 2 teleports of this game. Pause coming in. Somebody's having a bit of an issue. We will be back in shortly. I think it's not a serious issue. And with these 2 teleports, it does make a lot of difference in terms of how people can get around the map. None of these champions they're playing are particular mobility champions. LeBlanc, okay at roaming, because once she gets there, she's so devastating, but she does not move particularly fast, and Anivia, obviously, is not a champion that gets around very quickly.
Anivia is always one of those champions that you kind of look at it like her strengths, she's very, very good at them. Like the anti-siege, siege capabilities of Anivia are second to none. The zone control is ridiculous, and Joestar's under pressure from Captain Monk into the top side, able to drop that counter-strike, keep himself safe at the unstoppable force from Flex Point, able to juggle him into the air with Captain Monk there to help him. Galzera with a beautiful follow-up ultim under the turret and forces Flex Point to flash away. Both top laners now very low as Galzera goes in a little bit too deep. Captain Monk still does a lot of damage. We're still working with the very early game. We're not even at 9 minutes in yet. So despite the fact that Rek'Sai is normally not seen as a champion who does a huge amount of damage, normally just going with that pure tank build, she's still got quite high base damages to work with for this point in the game.
And they could almost go under tower at this point. Captain Monk still has a lot of health for tanking up this tower. And in they go.
Counter-strike placement is so important for Joestar here, and he's not able to keep himself alive despite that, though. Galzaren just going down to that blue buff. There was nothing he could do even if he stayed there. He was completely out of mana. He's just going to donate that blue over to Advantage, who's then going to use it to press his advantage and continue to shove these minion waves up. Although Anivia is not normally thought of as a LeBlanc counter, indeed it's pretty much the other way around, the thing is, LeBlanc's not able to roam freely against Anivia because of the ridiculous amount of push power on that champion. LeBlanc knows that there is an opportunity cost every time she roams.
And not only that, but you have to realize that Advantage is playing into a challenger, or excuse me, a challenger tier player. Insanity Triple X is the challenger player that we were talking about earlier. This guy has what should be a ludicrous skill advantage as well as a good champion matchup, and yet Anivia has still managed, Advantage on Anivia has still managed to pull himself through this more dangerous early game completely intact, and in fact almost even in CS.
Definitely trying to make his mark on this game, make sure nobody counts him down and out just yet, and Dynamic Strangers, although they are up 2-1, are down about 700 gold at this point in time just from the CS advantages across this map going over to the side of YouTubers R Us. Gordon Ramsay and his buddy God tier Panth in this bot side just continuing to farm it up, not able to find that same level of early zoning and aggression they were able to find in the very few early levels of this game. The culling comes out, dropped onto Gordon Ramsay just for some zone control damage. Captain Monk over the wall getting rid of Galzaren, making sure he doesn't get too much control, too many wards down in this red team jungle.
And both of these guys are opting for a Cinderhulk build. They want to be tanky for their team, and that's something that these teams sorely lack otherwise. These are, I mean, there is the Malphite. I should say something more specifically that Strangers lacks. Dynamic Strangers, all they've got for them is the Sejuani, who is not the tankiest of tanks. And Anivia and Lucian are both fairly squishy champions. They do have, oh, God tier Panther really wants this, but yes, there's the shield.
He's able to find it, but the shield gets there in time. Chris Brown Senpai knows what he's doing, and as you saw there, he held the shield. He knew that God tier Panth was running at them. He knows that Blitzcrank's desired target is the Lucian in that scenario, but if he pops the black shield too early, God tier Panth switches targets, tries to just pull in Chris Brown Senpai, and with Captain Monk nearby, they're able to make that 3v2 happen no matter what. Joestar taking a lot of damage from Flex Point into the top side. The Unstoppable Force comes down, and the damage is there. Seismic Shard brings Joestar down. His second death of the game as Insanity Triple X is able to find some chains onto Advantage. He misses the second one, however, does force the flash from Advantage over that wall. Captain Monk being there would have assured a death for Advantage before he was able to revive with the egg and get himself away. A good flash, knowing he needed to use it this time.
That was really unfortunate for Joestar on Jax, getting killed like that, overestimating his ability to fight against this Malphite. I stand totally corrected. There is no advantage for Jax in that matchup. He tries to beat up on the Malphite, and the Malphite, it just does not care. He's just too tanky. The Warden's Mail and the Balmy Cinder combining to make him both durable and damaging to that low health Jax.
Advantage finding some damage onto Insanity Triple X, zoning him away from this potential dragon fight. God tier Panth trying to put as much hurt onto Chris Brown Senpai as he can. TSM Joestar teleports in, and it's going to be Flex Point right behind him. Blue team takes the dragon, but Galzaren is in a lot of danger. He's able to find the ultimate to the enemy team and takes down Captain Monk before he escapes over the wall. God tier Panth trying to run away from Joestar, but he's got to make sure that he gets away in time because Advantage is waiting right there. No mana on this bird though. Insanity Triple X over the wall as Advantage does not have enough mana to actually find that icicle. The chain will connect onto Advantage. The egg is still ready should they need it. Black Shield keeps him alive for the time being. He's got to get as close to his turret as he can, unless that egg is going to end up scrambled, and Gordon Ramsay, the chef, cooks up the egg and takes down the bird. That's going to be the third kill of the game for YouTubers R Us. They got 3 guys mid, and they're going to be looking to push.
That was really an over-aggressive play by Strangers trying to take that dragon when they really had no business doing so. Fortunately, Galzaren manages to smite it away and get off an excellent 3-man Sejuani ult, really turning that fight into something that they could take to their advantage. Unfortunately, Anivia dying on the end of it there. Not all they do really get out of it is the dragon, but even so, a nice pickup for them, much better than their previous attempt at it.
Now, we talked earlier about how the junglers are both Cinderhulk this game, and for both of these junglers, there's not really a viable alternative. Yeah, you could do something cheesy like Runeglaive Sejuani or Warrior Rek'Sai, but in terms of actually playing competitive League of Legends, Cinderhulk's really the only option for both these junglers. Now, where they differ is that Sejuani has decided to go for the new Tracker's Knife, the one that allows you to drop extra wards now that you can't buy green wards on your own, while Rek'Sai sticks with the tried and true Chilling Smite. So it's going to be Sejuani playing more of a macro game, trying to grab vision for her team, trying to make sure that everybody's got eyes where they need to have them, while Rek'Sai is going to be more invested in making sure that the individual ganks, the more micro aspect of jungling, is paying off.
I bet you that Ruby Sightstone that Rek'Sai has is going to turn, or that Ruby that he has is going to turn into a Sightstone, telegraphing my intentions there. He is opting for a less item-efficient build in terms of slots, but he is going for something that will give him that extra advantage. Like you said, the Chilling Smite's going to be useful for utility around in those fights, in those skirmishes in particular, locking people down, especially against this team like the Anivia, who has no mobility. If you get a Chilling Smite onto her that's slow, it's all the more effective for being undashable.
Joestar able to find some damage onto Flex Point. He's got that Ginsu's Rage Blade fully charged, but he has to respect the damage that Flex Point is able to output. Unstoppable Force is such a powerful tool in this matchup, and it's something that Jax has to be always ready to consider when he goes in for that 1v1 on Malphite. Galzerion across the lane trying to come in and collapse onto this one. Flex Point might not be able to handle them both. He's able to drop the Seismic Shard, but Counter-Strike is going to be able to find plenty of damage along with a stun onto Flex Point. Sejuani drops the ultimate, and Joestar running away pretty far from this one. A little bit of a miscommunication from Dynamic Strangers. Galzerion wants to go in, Joestar wants to back off. Joestar must have been thinking that Captain Monk was close enough to help out, and he's absolutely right. And now Flex Point's able to find the Unstoppable Force into the slam, and that's going to be Galzerion dropped for the second time this game as Advantage finds enough damage to pop LeBlanc's passive, in the mid lane, but Insanity returns the favor and takes down the bird. The Ignite comes down onto Insanity, and it's going to be a 1-for-1 in the mid lane as Joestar manages to get himself killed without killing Flex Point in the top side. The turret almost makes it a 1-for-1 up there, but it's not quite going to be the case. Chris Brown Senpai pulled into God Tier Pants and Gordon Ramsay. The Sivir ultimate is popped, the spell shield is down, but it does not block anything. God Tier Pants, one more hit's going to be able to find it. Apizan in chase, able to find Piercing Light onto Gordon Ramsay, but now God Tier Pants likely going to be able to secure this kill nice and easy. He needs a pull to make it happen, though. Apizan has to be careful to dodge away from this one. If it connects, he's going to go down, and it does. God Tier Pants shooting straight, grabs his target. That's going to be Lucian's first death of the game.
So much back and forth in this game, originally starting out with a kill lead for the Dynamic Strangers, but YouTubers R Us have really pulled themselves back. I mean, they were never behind in gold, but in terms of kills, they are now up as well for a 4K gold lead. They do not have a dragon yet, which is the one advantage that Dynamic Strangers have over them. But really, in the current meta, what's a dragon really worth?
It really is crazy how a 2-kill game can be a 4,000 gold lead here at just the 17-minute mark. That's a very impressive lead for this YouTuber team, and it's something they're going to be able to work with. They've got a 30 CS advantage topside, 14 in mid lane, and, well, 1 in bot side, so that one doesn't really count very much. But if you look at the extra CS being accrued by Blitzcrank as well, that adds up to about 20. So these guys are having advantages across the map in terms of farming, and it's just showing overall slightly better lane mechanics that are resulting in a real gold lead for these guys. Malphite 3-0-2, Flex Point making his impact in this top lane, and of course TSM Joestar is no slouch either. He's got 3 kills as well, but the problem is he's also got 3 deaths on top of it, while Flex Point is still sitting on a flawless game.
And let's not forget the junglers here, Sejuani and Rek'Sai. The Rek'Sai has a 26 CS lead. In the jungle, that's insane. Right now, that's a 1,500 gold lead from CS alone. One of the biggest flaws of the Sejuani pick is she has...
Flex Point with the dive on towards Advantage, but the flash is going to be able to keep her safe for the time being. Galzerion in the middle of everyone. Chris Brown Senpai able to find the ulti, but he finds a lot of damage too. Captain Monk flashing under the turret, able to find the finish off onto that target, but now he's under a lot of pressure from Apizan. The shutdown goes over to Galzerion and Joestar. Gordon Ramsay under pressure. It's going to be Piercing Light, able to pierce her heart. Gordon Ramsay is down for the count, and that's a 2-for-1 so far, actually in favor of the Strangers. God Tier Pants under pressure might just die to that extra damage from Lucian. Galzerion not going to be able to catch up to that one, though, and YouTubers this time are the ones who overextend, bite off a little bit more than they can chew, and now it's up to Dynamic Strangers to find something off the back of this fight. It's not the fights that matter, Fury, it's what you do with them.
It really is. And that was, on the other hand, when you botch a fight that badly, I mean, you got a 4K gold lead at 18 minutes into the game, and you decide that like a 2 or 3 at a time, 5-man dive under 2 different towers is the way to go. Maybe a little bit of overconfidence there. These guys know they have an advantage, but I don't think they have that much of an advantage. They are, however, looking to turn this back around. Insanity gonna pick up something for, oh, not quite.
Sanity and Captain Monk looking to chase this one that much deeper. Joestar in the brush looking to just back away from this one. Don't actually have any vision on these guys, so they're not going to be able to go any deeper. Joestar and Galzerian still waiting, though, making sure that if these guys try to go a little bit further, they're going to be able to stop them. God Tier Panth and Sanity and Monk going to be able to steal away this red buff. Dynamic is in no position to be able to fight for this one right here, right now, so instead they're just going to hop over this wall, take the dragon, and tie those up 1-all.
It's unfortunate that they were all piled on top of the red like that, because it really messes with the pathing. With the new weird aggro for jungle monsters, if they hop back and forth between people who they're targeting, it really sends them back to base very, very quickly. This is going to be Captain Monk a little bit overextended here. He knows Galzerian's there, but oh!
Captain Monk able to infiltrate the enemy jungler and get out of dodge this time. Galzerian steps on that tunnel, but it's not in time to actually shut down the opponent before the escape comes out. God Tier Panth is going to meet up with Insanity, rendezvous around the river, and walk away to safety. YouTubers able to push their advantage and actually get away with it that time.
For sure. That evens up the dragons. Their YouTubers are still ahead by a turret and a kill, but they are still sitting on the exact same gold lead they were at before, despite those advantages that they grabbed.
The binding connects, and now he's in a lot of trouble. Absent able to find the piercing light. There's no way to keep yourself alive through that one as God Tier Pants gets stuck by the back end of Chris Brown Senpai's ultimate. Absent now has to be careful about this one. God Tier Pants with the pull under the turret, and now Captain Monk looking to clean up both. Chris Brown Senpai almost going to drop to that turret, but he's going to be able to get away for the time being. Prey Seeker gonna change that nice and quick, though. Double kill Captain Monk. 2 for 2 in the bot side. However, more assists will go over to YouTubers R Us.
That said, Dynamic Stranger's really showcasing the strength of Illusion at this point in the game. He gets the Static Shift, he gets the Essence Reaver, and his ability to output damage is insane. Even with the Blitzcrank running interference, he was able to just take out Gordon Ramsay in a heartbeat. That was very decisive, and if he can continue to keep up that pressure in the bot lane, he can keep this Sever down a bit. And if they can do that, the way AD carries are right now, they scale so well into the late game. They always have, but even more so now with the new items. And he should be able to be a serious strength for his team, hopefully dealing with the rock for the enemy team, that Malphite with so much of an advantage over his lane opponent that really, once he enters fights, things become much more dangerous for Dynamic Strangers.
One thing that YouTubers has to be aware of is they do have a 5,000 gold lead, but the problem is that gold isn't where it needs to be in both a traditional sense and in a sense of this game's team composition, period. Normally, you want to see the gold on your carries, but even more so, in a pick composition, the gold needs to be on the champions doing the damage to make the burst for the pick to work. It doesn't matter if you pick somebody off. If you don't kill them, they're going to be able to get up with their team, make it so they're actually able to force a normal team fight instead of a pick scenario. The problem is, the two members doing the best on YouTubers right now are the Malphite and the Rek'Sai, the tanks of the team. They need to be able to find some fights where Gordon Ramsay and Insanity get some of these kills so that the pick potential that this team comp is built around really starts to come into its own.
Not only that, but Insanity has built a very defensive LeBlanc choice. I mean, that's a lot of magic resistance to have right off. He's very hard for this Anivia to kill, but very hard for the Anivia to kill is not the same thing as able to kill the Anivia. He has managed to pick up that kill once. Even so, that's between the Athene's Unholy Grail and the Abyssal Scepter, those are some serious defensive stats.
Making sure she can avoid as much damage from that Anivia as possible. It's also going to help against Galzerian and Joestar. Joestar, despite being a fighter character in most people's minds, does actually do a very large amount of magic damage, especially with Ginsu's Rage Blade becoming the new norm as opposed to Blade of the Ruined King into Trinity Force. Might be seeing another 2v2 here into the bot side. Nope, 3v2. Change that. Captain Monk able to come down and collapse. Absent pulled into the middle of everyone, trying to make this a 1-for-1. Gordon Ramsay going to be jumped onto by Joestar. 3v3 now as God Tier Panth able to find the kill onto Absent, but now Joestar just beating on him, finding quite a bit of damage, able to jump forward. One more hit's going to be able to do it. Joestar getting slowed down by that Cutlass. He gets killed. Gordon Ramsay trying to apply those boomerangs onto Joestar. Insanity triple X over the wall, able to find the auto attack to bring down the Jax. It's a 3-for-1 in the bot lane. YouTubers will take that one, and they'll go up back to that previous 5,000 gold lead.
It was a nice try, but unfortunately the enemy was in a position to take care of them. There is so much warding strength on this bot side by YouTubers R Us. I mean, look at that red all over that bottom map. They know everything that's going on here, and they were totally ready for that to happen. Now they're about to take this top tier 2. They aren't quite going to get it, but that's a lot of damage being put down by Flexpoint.
FlexPoint's doing so much work, Kane. This guy is where he needs to be. He's doing what he needs to do, and he's very, very hard to kill. Flashing away from Advantage's stun, going to be able to get himself away to safety on that one. The thing is, though, this guy has Frozen Heart, Sunfire Cape, and Ninja Tabby. He's very, very, very hard to kill for anything doing physical damage. Appizin's going to have a very hard time with this one as Captain Monk and Galzarian get in a wet noodle fight over that Gromp. But Advantage is going to shred through Flex Point. Those icicles are going to hurt like crazy, and he has to respect the damage from Advantage if he wants to make sure he keeps himself alive in these team fights.
Ordinarily, I'd agree with you, but he's so far up in levels as well. He's done such a good job. He's got enough health, and he's just got so much tank. And while Anivia does do good damage, it's more of a burst against squishy champions. Her only real sustained damage against tanks like Flexpoint is going to be her ultimate. And any situation in which Malphite ends up staying consistently in that would be very unusual, because really all he's all about is being able to make those picks where his team can burst people down. So if he goes in, you would expect him to just take someone down really, really fast and get out as quickly as possible. As well, with his ability to increase his own movement speed, it means he can get out of that ultimate as quickly as possible.
Dragon going to be spawning here for the third time in the game in about 5 seconds. We can see both teams positioning somewhat around there. Dragon's become less important of an objective as we've gone into the preseason. Games are usually over by the time Aspect would ever be considered to be on the table. So teams aren't really fighting for it like fight or die mode like they used to. But we're still seeing a lot of attention, especially in this game, being given to that Dragon area. Chris Brown, Senpai, and Appizan able to position themselves over the wall, dropping those pink boards, making sure they try to set up some line of vision. But YouTubers are already on the objective as the TP comes in from Flex Point. This is the potential fight they're looking for. The stun up onto Malphite. There's the Anivia ulti, and Flex Point AP is just evaporating. Able to find the Unstoppable Force 1 to 2 different targets, though. Red team has slain the Dragon, but Appizan already down from Insanity Triple X. Insanity looking for even more damage, and the chain will find just that, a double kill for the LeBlanc, as Anivia is forced to flash away to keep herself alive. Captain Monk looking to potentially go deeper. Joestar jumps in, but it might have been a little overzealous. Insanity able to find change onto Advantage. Gordon Ramsay will die, though. The bird cleans up that one. It's a 2 for 2 so far, as Dynamic Strangers with very, very low health bars has to be careful how they manage this one. Advantage egged up under the turret. The passive will be popped, and an amazing pull from God Tier Pants gets him killed. Chilling Smite comes down. Ultimately, that's a 1-for-1, but they take down the anti-siege. They take down the ability to clear away the minions under this turret, and they create Insanity and Triple X. Insanity, Triple X, and Captain Monk the ability to push.
That was a 3 for 3 with everything Strangers had focused onto Flex Point first. I mean, that guy's the tank. The worst case scenario for you is that you have to burst him down first, and they couldn't get him down before he could use his ultimate. He made a good ultimate, got it onto an important target, and they got Appizan, who is the really ahead carry for Strangers, out as fast as possible. And even so, YouTubers barely came out ahead in that. Yeah, they got the extra Dragon, but like you said, Dragon stacking not so much of a deal right now, and that was such a close fight despite the gold advantage. If fights keep going like that, YouTubers will eventually win, but if they can manage to get around that Malphite and put some damage onto the squishier targets in the back, get Gordon Ramsay or Insanity first, Dynamic Strangers could take the next fight with just that extra little bit of positioning.
Well, the big thing about that fight is the fact that Insanity Triple X went from 1-1 to 4-1 off the back of that when they finally got the kills on one of the champions that they needed the kills on. They finally stopped pouring these resources into the tanks, and now they've got that real pick potential coming out as LeBlanc finds more and more AP. We saw how fast she was able to take Appizan down in that river team fight. Malphite sets it up with Unstoppable Force. Insanity just collapses afterwards, and the damage is there. As this game goes on, that's going to turn from a mostly 100-0 into a pure 100-0.
For sure. The advantage of a LeBlanc, she does not descale as much as she used to. She still scales pretty well into the game. The AP itemization changes will hurt her a little bit, but no more than they do so advantage. And she's opted for a build that lets her go very, very deep into the enemy team and still have a solid chance of surviving. Now, I'm wondering if this is a Luden's Echo or a Crystal Scepter coming out next. I would think it would be a Luden's Echo, given LeBlanc's build, but if she continues this trend of building defensive stats, that would be an interesting pickup, enabling her to do much more crowd control. Hopefully, Luden's Echo, they need damage to go with all of their CC, but we shall see.
Could also just be a Rabadon's Death Cap.
There is that, yes.
Plenty of potential for her just to realize that her build's very defensive so far, want to spike the offensive capabilities of that, and instead just choose to build straight into the most AP-heavy item in the game. There's a lot of things you can build with Large Rod plus Amp Tome, and we'll have to see exactly where she goes with that one. Speaking of builds, we can see Flexpoint having Abyssal Scepter completed as his third item, finally shoring up that weak spot in the magic defense, while also giving himself a little extra burst potential. Not only himself, but this is a really good pickup in terms of facilitating the damage from the rest of his team as well. Obviously, LeBlanc already has one, so it's not that big of a deal, but the thing remains, having that Abyssal Scepter in there further magnifies the damage that you might see coming out from God Tier Pants magic damage, which, remember, all Blitzcrank's burst is magical damage, and if Insanity XXX didn't have one, it would help for her as well. So he's playing to be able to make it so that there's more burst coming out, and the pick comp is more easily able to do what it needs to do.
It is just a standard pickup on Mouth to get that item if you have a magic dealer in the game. It is a little unfortunate that Insanity XXX also picked it up and felt that need for that extra magic resist. It's a less synergistic build than they could have gone for together, but even so, they are in a very strong position. They're up to a 5k gold lead, which is not a big advantage over where they were before, but they are not falling behind. And Sivir is one of those 80 carries that when she gets into late game can start putting out some really ridiculous damage in those brawly fights. And with these two team comps, brawly fights are what it's about.
Gordon Ramsay on 1-5 and 9, no, definitely not the carry for his team this game. He's one of the guys who's been struggling. He's the one who's had a lot of attention paid to him by Apizan, by Chris Brown Senpai, and Joestar and Galzeran giving plenty of love to that bot lane as well, trying to set Gordon behind and get Apizan ahead. So Gordon's doing a very good job making sure he stays caught up in farm. We can see 5 different people in this game all around about 200 CS, and Gordon's one of them despite being 1 and 5 with everyone else on that list of 5 people being at least at an even KDA. So he's doing well to keep himself in the game in terms of farm, but at the same time, I'm definitely looking at Insanity XXX and Flexpoint to be the ones who carry this game. Rek'Sai having an impressive score as well, but as the game goes on, Rek'Sai pretty much just gets translated into simply an initiation disruption bot.
It is one of my least favorite parts about that champion, is that the late game for her is just so weak. She only brings vision and that knockup. And while those are two very nice tools to have, the lack of a damage-dealing champion in those fights can really hurt your team.
The damage, of course, isn't completely off the table, but it's not something crazy like you can see from other champions. I mean, she's still able to build the Titanic Hydra. She's still able to output some damage that way, but it's just not enough to be able to actually pose a true damage threat in the fights. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with being 6 and 2. Captain Monk's had a wonderful game so far, so I'm really looking to see him continue to go deep in these fights, make those backline initiations, get on top of advantage especially, and set up for his team to take down that Anivia. Flash over the wall coming out from Apizan, keeping himself safe from God Tier Panther and Insanity as they pick up what's going to be their 4th turret of the game and start knocking on the door of this inhibitor.
Dynamic Strangers woefully unprepared for this rotation by YouTubers R Us. That's an easy tier 2 for them to pick up with no contest, and now they're going for the middle one while Strangers is still rotating all over the place. Joestar really wants this fight up with Flexpoint, but he's still losing it.
Joestar's finally got some sustain. He's got that completed Gunblade, so he knows that in this fight over time with Flexpoint, he's not just going to drop to the burst, and Insanity XXX is going to be able to follow up and show him what real burst means, though. Jumping in, got that distortion, got that kill. 18-14 now the team score, an 8,000 gold lead for YouTubers R Us as they're positioned to take down the next Tier 2 turret.
There is no need to waste that flash when you're obviously that doomed. Joestar should have just accepted his fate. There was nothing he was going to do about this, and now this Tier 2 turret is almost definitely going down without Joestar to help defend it, but they do have to wait for the next minion wave to come in. And if they can manage to pull off a defense with that Anivia, with advantage, able to make the wave clears, that would be a big deal for Strangers.
What Strangers has to be very aware of, though, is the potential for God Tier Panth to pull someone away over that wall. They've got to make sure that that doesn't end up happening, because especially if it's advantage, Siege is over. Blitzcrank finds a pull, the siege ends. You either throw that person under the bus, only allow one person to get picked off, or you jump into a fight that you didn't want to take to begin with and potentially have it go that much worse. God tier Panth is posing a very unique threat to this team that normally you don't have to worry about, and it's really messing up what they want to do in terms of defending. Galzerin being caught out now by Captain Monk. The burst comes down, Insanity Triple X able to find quite a lot. Not quite enough, though, until God tier Panth pulls him back over the wall, and that's going to be another free pick for this YouTubers R Us team.
This is the kind of Blitzcrank you pray to have on your team. Every single time you see someone pick him, and it never is. But this time, this one time, YouTubers R Us pull out the God tier. The God tier freaking Blitzcrank. They are going to go for the Baron, and there is no vision and no opportunity to stop this from Strangers.
Strangers doesn't really have a way to answer this whatsoever. Their jungler's already dead. They don't have the ability to collapse into the pit and get set up without that Sejuani ult anyway. So they're going to have to give this one away for free and then do their best to defend what they can. There's still 2 tier 2 turrets standing on the dynamic Strangers side. YouTubers R Us is going to be able to walk down and take those if they want, or they could just pick one lane and go deep for that inhibitor.
The Lucian and the Anivia are probably some of the best options you could have for wave clearing Baroned up minions. But at this point in the game, Baroned up minions are very, very hard to wave clear, even for those 2 very impressive wave clear champions. Anivia, I don't think she's built enough damage with these 2 very defensive builds coming out for these champions. But Rod of Ages, Abyssal Scepter, and Athene's Unholy Grail make you very, very hard to kill, even if you're on a super squishy champion like Anivia. But they don't give you the damage necessarily to clear out these massive waves if they're all purpled up.
LeBlanc will complete that Luden's Echo 3rd item, and Void Staff comes out 4th, so we're starting to see the real damage investments come out here from Insanity Triple X. Last item is the only one left remaining to build, so LeBlanc actually getting pretty close to that full build spot as we look to approach the 32-minute mark. Anivia still sitting on 2 items she needs to complete as Joestar and Flexpoint get into another one of those patented 1v1s topside. Joestar wanting to run away from this one, but Flexpoint says, no thank you, sir. Able to find that unstoppable force and go even deeper. Joestar does not have the sustain to be able to deal with this one. Counter-Strike going to come out, tries to stun him up, but will not be able to connect that one. Jumping over the wall onto the ward, gets himself away safely for the time being, but Seismic Shard's going to be able to connect. Galzerin looking to rotate through that river, help his ally get away, and they will be able to do so. Flexpoint does use his flash, trying to go for that Jax pick, so he won't have that for the next team fight. If they could have potentially used that for a dive, that's off the table for the next 5 minutes.
Ditto his ult. This guy is going for an Iceborne Gauntlet on top of everything else, which will give him max cooldown reduction and so much armor. Like, this Malphite is sitting on the truly most ridiculous amount of armor that I have ever seen on a champion at this point in the game. That guy is tanky as hell. Joestar, even with his magic damage, is going to have a very hard time eating through that champion, and he's not able to clear these minions out in time.
Flexpoint looking to collapse one more time. He finds a turret. Can he find a champion along with it? Brutal
His
Strike's
ult's
enough
almost
to
up.
give him some damage. No ult available in time, so Jax having to walk away from that one. But now Flexpoint able to push this topside turret, taking some damage from it. Doesn't even care. He's got the armor to resist that despite the shred as the rest of his team continues to push elsewhere. We saw Gordon Ramsay and Apazin in that 1v1 bottom side. Apazin able to hold the line for the time being, but now Ramsay and the rest of the YouTubers are going to be able to come back and push it one more time. God tier Panth coming up, trying to be able to find the grab. He's going to be able to connect it, but the Black Shield comes out and keeps him safe once again. A nice ultimate comes out from Galzerin as Chris Brown Synthpike tries to get in there and get that follow-up ulti down. Captain Monk in the backline forcing the flash away from Apazin as Chris Brown now under pressure. He's going to be the first casualty of this fight. Galzerin in advantage, trying to see what they can do to clean somebody up. God tier Panth gets away from the stun though as the TP looks to come in from Flexpoint. Ulti is available if they need it. Joestar in the middle of everybody, 3-man stun. God tier Panth in the middle of that Anivia ulti, and it's going to be a great unstoppable force on the 2. Advantage forced to run away as now Captain Monk in hot pursuit. The egg is down. Lucian's pulled in. This is going to be a wipe. This is an ace. This is YouTubers R Us about to take game number 1.
That was a great Sejuani ult, but there was no follow-up from the team. There was no one there to take advantage of it. Unfortunately, as much as they did a pretty good job of staying open, even in their lanes, throughout the game, only following a little bit behind, eventually, Dynamic Strangers, their lack of ability to rotate and group together, just getting outplayed in that regard by YouTubers R Us, and it loses them the game all at once.
It was a very close game for a good long while, but ultimately the YouTubers end up exploding in terms of their advantage as it goes on. Once you give them a little, they take a lot. They end up with a 17,000 gold advantage and a 1-0 advantage in this series. Stick around, everybody. We're going to be back just momentarily for game number 2. If YouTubers win it, they're the victors of this whole shebang. If they don't, however, we're going to a game number 3. Stay tuned.
miss those nights when we were younger and we would never sleep. So let's forget about tomorrow and live for tonight while we're free. Touch the sky. Tonight we're coming alive. Sky. Tonight we're coming alive. And our hands will touch the sky. Tonight we're coming alive. From the dust we will awaken, and life will fill our veins. But these are the moments that we live for. I can keep it inside of me. Touch the sky. Tonight we're coming alive. Touch the sky. Tonight we're coming alive.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to House B 5v5. You're live with us for the Minor League Playoffs. I'm Captain Flowers here for play-by-play, joined by Fury Golem on the color commentary. This is game number 2 between YouTubers R Us, this time on the blue team, and Dynamic Strangers, switching over to the red. YouTubers R Us was able to take game 1 in a thrilling fashion, and will they be able to do it in game number 2? Dynamic Strangers going to have to hold their own here, or YouTubers will run away with the whole series. Fury, how do you feel about this one after what we saw in game number 1?
I'm honestly, at this point, a little bit worried for Dynamic Strangers. They pulled out a really good game last time, but it wasn't quite good enough. They had a bit of a champion mismatch. Champions that I would have made the exact same mistake on, but that Jax into the Malphite did not work out for them at all. They're going to have to be a little bit more careful about what they play. The one exception to that I would say is their first pick choice of the Anivia actually worked out amazingly well for them. I mean, that's not a champion you expect to first pick and then just have it do totally fine through lane, but it did. Now, this is going to have to be a situation where they pull out something a little bit better in the jungle in particular. There were some truly great Sejuani ults that came out last game, But as you saw, there was no follow-up for the team. They weren't pulled out at the right moment. And when Sejuani doesn't have her ult, she doesn't really have anything. So they either need to work together better as a team, or they need to be able to make sure that when they get something that can work on its own without having to be so reliant on the team like Sejuani is. They actually have banned out their own Anivia at this point, along with the LeBlanc. They do not want that mid lane matchup to be a thing that exists. While on the other side, YouTubers has continued to ban out fairly typical stuff, get rid of the Soraka, get rid of the Tahm Kench, and now Mundo has made his way into the top list of things that need to be banned because of how successful he's been in the jungle lately.
One ban left to go. It is really weird. See Dynamic Strangers ban away the mid laner that they picked last game, but it might be some sort of, I don't know, comfort ban against whatever they think they're going to be going up against on YouTubers R Us. They might know somebody's going to play Anivia or somebody likes to play Anivia. That might explain why they first picked it last time, to try to deny it from the enemy. So they will be banning that one away. They don't want it on the table. And Zach, a very unusual 6th ban, showing up as well.
He was banned last game as well, but in that game, he was banned by the YouTubers. Apparently, neither of these teams want to see this guy. He has been creeping up in power slowly. He's a personal favorite of mine. He is my main champion. And over the time, he's slowly getting picked up again because of all these tiny, tiny buffs that he keeps getting in each of the patches. I'm not sure he's really necessarily worth specifically banning at this point, unless you know the opponent team plays him. But that doesn't seem to be the case, since both of these teams have banned him separately.
First pick this time, going to be going over to the blue team. We saw them hover the fiddle last time as well. I think it's just a meme that FlexPoint does at this point. He hovers the fiddlesticks because he knows that champion, despite the fact that he hasn't been directly nerfed in a while, has been indirectly nerfed by pretty much every change that could possibly affect him. The AP jungle item being changed to a Sheen style item hurts fiddlesticks. The changes
so
to
awful.
fear that make you run away from the person instead of in circles hurts fiddlesticks. Everything pretty much that could hurt fiddlesticks hurts fiddlesticks. So they're going to lock in the Elise instead. Still having that magical pressure in the jungle, but on a champion that's not native to the dumpster.
Yeah, you know, you gotta pick a champion that's actually worth playing, and Elise is one of the top jungle champions right now. She has fallen off a bit in popularity lately, which has actually surprised me, since really she hasn't fallen off in effectiveness at all. The only reason, for the most part, that she has not been as popular lately is people are learning to play against her again. She's one of those champions with those really weird kits that when everyone doesn't know how to play against her, she's really, really strong. But once people get more used to her playstyle, there are more counters. Now, the Lulu and the Braum, that is a lot of defensive utility immediately coming in for this Strangers team. I'm a little bit worried about what that might say about their mindset. Hopefully, they will have the damage picks to back that up.
It's very, very indicative of a hyper carry composition. I'm fully expecting Dynamic Strangers to pull out some sort of hyper carry on the AD carry position this time. You've got the Braum, you've got the Lulu. The ingredients are already there. All we need to do is just get that last little bit of success that's going to make it all work together. As we can see the YouTubers pulling out the Lucian this game. They had to play against it last time. They saw how powerful it can be. They're like, you know, let's give that a shot. We're going to go with that one instead. Insanity Triple X going to be locking in the Twisted Fate. I've seen this guy play Twisted Fate before. I've just watching random people's streams. Obviously, when you watch high ELO streams, you see other high ELO players. So I've seen him on the Twisted Fate before. I know he's familiar with the champion. We're going to have to see how many plays he can make on this one. We actually didn't see a whole lot of like roaming plays coming out of him last game on the LeBlanc. I'm fully expecting to see a much more active rotation-based playstyle on a champion whose entire identity revolves around those actions.
And they have chosen the appropriate, like the two exact champions you have to pick once you settle yourself into a hyper-comp situation with a Lulu and a Braum. You pick the Jinx because, frankly, Kog'Maw's off the table as a hyper carry now, because unlike all of the other AD carries that got reworked, Kog'Maw is trash. He's just trash. But I don't know what Riot was like, oh yeah, no, he'll just stand completely still. I'm sure no one at a high ELO will learn how to counter that. Anyway, moving right along, and then you've got the Olaf. And Olaf and Lulu work so very well together. And when you're playing Olaf and the enemy team locks in a Twisted Fate and Elise, you're like, oh yeah, give me some of that. Because you can go right through all of those targeted lockdown stuns that the enemy's expecting to be able to use to stop you. And neither of those champions are all that effective at dealing with you once you get into there. Lucian, a bit of a different story. He's a little more effective against the Olaf, able to dash out of the way. Jax as well, okay against that matchup. But Olaf, if played appropriately, should be very, very strong in this scenario. Wow, the Alistar as well.
Olaf's a champion who can actually deal with Jax pretty well. It's not quite as oppressive as the Malphite is. You don't slow his attack speed down so high he can't even hit you with Empower. But at the same time, you're able to hit him with the True Strikes through his Counter Strike. All you have to do is just not auto-attack him while he's spinning. And then you're able to use the Undertow to attack him very effectively as well. So Jax and Olaf, it's going to be a fun top lane matchup to see. It's going to largely come down to who plays it better, I believe. In the mid lane, Insanity Triple X versus what looks like is going to be Joestar on that mid lane Lulu. Again, this is one where Insanity Triple X is going to be the one looking to likely rotate more often. He's going to be the one first to leave the lane, and it's going to be up to Joestar then to rotate after him, because Lulu does a wonderful job if somebody's trying to make a play or rotation into a different lane, trying to force that unfair 3v2 scenario or whatever into bot side. If Lulu can get down there in time to pop the wild growth, pretty much get rid of the effectiveness of that early burst in that 3v2, she can make it really easy for her team to turn that around. Or if she's not able to read where Insanity's going, what he's doing, it's going to be up to her to make sure she's shoving that lane out with those glitter lances and making him pay for those rotations.
And that is a Rammus pickup. Now, Rammus is one of those junglers who's always been right on the edge of viable through all of the iterations. He has briefly seen some success, but every time Rammus starts looking successful, right, it's like, no, bad Rammus. He's supposed to sit there right at the bottom of pickable. Now, in his current iteration, he's probably at some of the strongest he's ever been, sans that Season 2 nonsense he had. But he's up against a team that is kind of strange for him to be playing against. None of these champions are really what you'd expect him to fight against. You want Rammus to be able to come in really, really fast, taunt someone into you, and then be able to deal with the damage they're putting out. Now, most of these champions are able to escape. The only exception to that is the Twisted Fate. So if he's planning on just camping the mid lane and be like, no, Insanity, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to go anywhere. We're just going to sit on you, make sure your life is terrible. That makes sense. And you can Lulu boost him to make him incredibly fast. But he's kind of a strange option for this very defensive re-engage team where he's so much about making engages of his own.
I do like the fact that he helps provide a very solid front line for dynamic strangers. Apazin should feel so safe with Joestar, Galzarin, and Chris Brown Senpai in front of him, and then advantage right there to say, oh, if you get in trouble, I got you. You're covered. I've got all these support spells. I don't even know what to do with all of them. We're going to be able to keep you safe. Apazin needs to be on point this game because so much of what his team's good at is protecting the AD carry.
For sure. This Jinx has to be at least even in CS for this to be an effective thing to do. And she's up against Lucian. And if there's anyone who's a lane bully right now, it's gotta be Lucian. And he's in there with an Alistar, which means their ability to engage and put down a chunk of damage is massive. While Elise coming in on the side is one of the better gankers for that early bottom lane dominance. She can cocoon somebody, and then you've got the Alistar coming in, and Lucian's ability to put down burst is ridiculous. So they're going to have to be very, very good with their warding and their map awareness to make sure that that gank can't happen from Captain Monk.
Captain Monk last game was on the early game jungling champion. He's doing it again this time, but the thing is, Galzarin's actually going to be able to have early pressure as well. I'm really hoping to see pretty much a competition between these junglers to see who can get into the lanes faster and more effectively.
That said, between the two of them, Elise can actually do a pretty good job of countering Rammus, because Rammus like, I'm going to powerball in, and you're like, cocoon, and then he's just spinning in place, wondering what he's doing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. One of those strange animations. You always got to love when Rammus gets hard CC'd when he's in his ball, because he just sits there and rotates. It's one of those weirdest looking things in the game, but it's always kind of funny to see. We do have about a minute left before we launch into this game. And the last thing that I want to touch on while we're in this lobby is the fact that although this top lane could go either way, depending on which way it goes, if one of these two gets ahead because of just the dueling, beat-down nature of both of these champions, the other is going to have a very hard time breathing without permission from their opponent.
Yeah, I have to admit, this is another game where I'm a little unsure of which way it's going to go, but ultimately I have to give the advantage over to the team that won last time. YouTubers are us, not just because of the fact that they won and because they're sitting on the higher solo queue ranks, but also their team comp isn't nearly so reliant on very specific win conditions. Purple team, the Strangers, they have to do very well in very specific ways in order to pull this out, whereas all YouTubers has to do is perform well in lane, and that's what they've been doing so far.
We're going to Yeah, excuse me. We're going to be launching into game here in about 5 seconds. Once we get through that loading screen, we'll be live for game number 2 between YouTubers Are Us and Dynamic Strangers. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to House Party 5v5. We're live for Minor League Playoffs. This is YouTubers Are Us in the blue versus Dynamic Strangers in the red. We're smack dab in the middle of a best of 3 in which YouTubers Are Us are up 1-0. I'm Captain Flowers here for the play-by-play, joined by Fury Golem on color commentary. Fury, how you feel about this one?
I feel like we might actually see a level 1 this time. We almost did, but both of these teams to the same spot. Joestar catches a gold card, doesn't care very much, and no one else wants to go in on this. So they just sort of posture around each other, but they know where they are. Very little chance of a catch coming in, despite all of the ranged slows that are available to this Strangers team. Lulu, Olaf, and Braum also very good at catching people out in that level 1, but they didn't manage to make it into that area unseen.
Speaking of things being very good, can I just go ahead and give a shout out on the wild chance that somebody from Riot is out there? You guys did so much better of a job making the Challenger border this year because we have Insanity Triple X in this game as a sub for the YouTubers team, and he's a Challenger player, so we've got the Challenger border to look at while we're in the loading screen. Last year, I honestly thought the Challenger border looked like a gold border with 2 rhinestones in it. But this year, it actually looks so much better than... I don't know what they did to it. They just added a little bit of extra detail. They made the gem part bigger, and it just looks 100% better. It actually looks like that's what you'd want for being in the top 200 in the country. These guys on YouTubers Are Us definitely have some high rankings under. They definitely had a strong showing in game number 1, and now that we're in game number 2, it's up to them to keep up that momentum, and it's up to their opponents to not let themselves get tilted, to not let themselves get discouraged, and bring it back for game number 2.
So this time around, we are seeing in the top lane that the Jax, Flex Point has actually switched over. Jax is on the other team now, running the exact same skin, but not the exact same player. And instead of opting for the Corrupting Potion, he's gone for a Longsword and 3 pots. Now he's already used up one of those pots because he went and took the small minions from the red buff of his enemy team. And now he's in the position to bully Joestar around a bit with a level advantage. And Joestar does have the inferior... stats because of that lack of a longsword. He'll have to be able to use that Corrupting Potion very well to make it worth it. Chris Brown Senpai showing a little bit of accuracy on those ranged hits. Unfortunately, he's not running Blitzcrank, so those skill shots aren't quite as important.
There are so many more biscuits in League of Legends now because of the changes to the masteries that were made. Used to, you would only ever see biscuits on some mid laners and supports usually, but in this game, we are currently looking at 7 different people running biscuits in the early game.
Well, it's just mandatory. I mean, if you're going to run potions, you basically have to have biscuits, and the alternative to taking biscuits is, I believe, the jungle camp one? And who wants the extra jungle camp time? Oh, Insanity getting beaten up by advantage.
Insanity taking some damage. Now Flex Point up top, under some trouble. Galzeran able to find the gank, but a good hop away from Flex Point to a ward. Going to be able to keep him safe for the time being. He's got the power to do that Lee Sin Katarina-style jump. You save your ward, you use it as an escape mechanism. But now Joestar able to find plenty of damage with those undertows. Will not be able to kill him, though. Both of these top laners have opted for the old-school Season 5 teleport strategy. No aggressive ignites going to be coming in from these guys, so no kill potential for Joestar.
And in this mid lane, Twisted Fate has run the typical Twisted Fate thing, which is the Flash and the Ghost, which does not give him a huge amount of kill pressure, but does increase his mobility even further. Oh, Captain Monk and Galzeran going at it.
Galzeran doesn't care that Elise is one of the strongest duelists in the jungle. He just wants a bite of her. He's able to find some damage, but he takes a lot more than he was looking for in the process of doing so. That Scuttle Crab apparently worth fighting over as Galzeran at advantage, looking to be able to find something onto Captain Monk, who flashes backwards into the enemy jungle. When Rammus is in hot pursuit, that's almost a guaranteed wasted flash. Galzeran going to use his as well to make sure they grab that first blood. That's going to be a 4-minute one this time, going over to Dynamic Strangers as a good wombo combo from God Tier Panth, maybe looking to even this one up. 1-all. God Tier Panth taking a lot of damage. Winter's Bite will be able to connect that ticking stun onto God Tier Panth. However, the last hit will not be able to proc it. 1-0 remains the score, but the gold is actually even due to YouTubers once again having that superior farm.
And up in the top, Joe
flash forward, able to find a Pulverize, headbutting Apizan backwards, and now Apizan in a very bad place. Chris Brown Senpai separated from his AD carry, now the one taking damage. Gordon Ramsay backwards a little bit, not able to find the target that he wants. They disengage this one. A wonderful engage from God Tier Panth.
He blows both of his summoners, the Ignite and the Flash, and all he gets is the Exhaust and the heal. There's Flash left on both Apizan and Chris Brown, so they actually come out a little bit ahead in terms of those summoner spells, but they are getting pushed around in this lane really, really hard. They are even up in CS at this moment, but they're so far down in health that even though they're going to get a little bit of a CS lead here, where they're pushed up to their tower, they're going to have to back very quickly or put themselves in a very dangerous position.
You're really looking, as YouTubers, to see Gordon Ramsay and God Tier Panth just bully the ever-living hell out of this bot lane. As Bob Ross would say, you gotta beat the devil out of him. Because Lucian is so much stronger in lane than Jinx is, that he has to pressure that advantage early. You gotta keep Jinx down. Jinx scales crazy into the late game with those rockets, the AoE, the range. It's nuts. So Lucian has to use that early and mid-game power spike to be able to keep her down and make it so he's the guy in charge for the majority of the game, considering League of Legends is a very, very fast-paced game now in comparison to what it used to be. Galzeran and Captain Monk into a little bit of a scrap here near topside. Both junglers wanting to help out these bruisers into this top side. Joestar taking some damage from Flex Point, going to be able to back away from that one before taking too much, though. Flex Point still with the advantage.
What we were talking about, that Elise Cocoon stopping the Rammus ball just like what it had to be a 1/10 of an inch away from her hitbox. That was so very close to being mutual knockups there. And unfortunately for the Rammus, he does not quite manage to get it
in trouble. Mid lane, forced to pop the Wild Growth to keep himself alive. Wants to make it a 1v1. Able to find the Ignite onto Captain Monk. The Glitter Lance is there. Still living for the time being. Able to drop the health picks onto himself. And Insanity is almost out of mana. If Advantage can find a little bit more, he's going to be able to find it.
Oh!
Lulu takes down 2 in a 1v2. And that's what you want to see. I don't care about your challenger border. I don't care about the fact that you guys have higher solo queue ranks. I'm just going to double kill you all the same and walk on home with a strut in my step. Advantage with one hell of an outplay.
Advantage did so well last game, playing into an unfortunate matchup and first picking for... Oh, down, here we go. Galzeran wants this.
God Tier Panth able to find the knockup onto 2, keeping his guys safe for the time being, but now the cow is under pressure. It's a backyard barbecue, and God Tier Panth is on the menu. Apizan going to be able to find the last rocket to take him down, and now Gordon Ramsay, the chef himself, in a little bit of trouble. Going to be able to escape, but he loses his friend in the meantime. 4-0 Dynamic Strangers.
These guys are not at all intimidated by the last game. They have come out super... Oh, nice dodge, Galzeran.
Galzeran gets himself away from the Spear's clutches. They will lose their pink ward as a cost for that, but considering they came down here, they got a kill, they got away with only losing the pink ward. That's no big deal whatsoever. They're really letting YouTubers know that they're not going to be just beat down in game number 2. A lot of times, even in the professional setting, even in Challenger series level games, you see teams lose a game 1 in a best of 3, and then game 2 they just look completely beaten, like they've given up. And Dynamic Strangers is not doing that this game. Great start from them.
I cannot sufficiently express how impressed I am by Advantage's play. Last game, yeah, it was good. It looked very strong. But, you know, sometimes these unusual matchups go ways that we're not expecting. But this is Lulu versus Twisted Fate. This is fairly in meta right here. And yes, Lulu is an early game bully, but that ability to turn around an Elise gank, Elise, one of the best early game gankers in the game, and kill them both. That guy, MVP
you know what
so
really
far.
facilitated it? The death of that so boring teleport meta. The fact that Advantage had Ignite is what enabled him to win that fight because he burned Captain Monk down and then was able to turn his sights onto Insanity. I'm so glad to see Ignite back in the lanes. It creates a much more interactive and kill-based dynamic in between these laners, and it makes for some crazy plays to see.
Yeah, as much fun as it was to see people go,
Joestar able to find a lot of damage onto Flex Point, but the burst from Jax is way too much. Ragnarok almost makes Dream a reality in the comeback, but instead it's going to be Flex Point able to find the first kill of the game for his team.
Joestar making the same mistake he made last time, which is he gets to this point in the game, he expects to have the advantage, and he goes hard and gets punished for it. That's twice now Flex Point has punished Joestar for that over-aggressive play in that middle laning phase.
Joestar's really trying to take advantages that he thinks he's able to find. You can tell that he wants to make the aggressive play. He wants to be able to find that pressure for his team that he can be as an ahead top laner. But the problem is he's up against a guy in Flex Point that really is also familiar with top lane matchups. He's familiar with the champions he's playing as well as the champions he's facing. He's not going to buy into those cheap parlor tricks. He's always going to be aware of what's going on around him, and it's something that Joestar's going to have to play around, that he can't try to play around his opponent's mistakes because Flex Point's not really making that many at this point. Gank coming up into the top side, bottom side as well, as Absent takes a lot of damage, forced to flash away. Insanity showing up, trying to make something happen, but they will be able to get out of dodge on that one. Flex Point, in the meantime, keeps himself alive top lane. 2 different ganks, 2 different teams, 2 different lanes, no kills.
An Advantage is able to, left alone in this mid lane with Insanity, using his ult to get down there, push in, take a pink ward up both sides, doing very nicely for his team in the vision game as well as the pressure game. This TF is getting bullied pretty hard, and his inability to make that gank work, that was such an important gank for him. He needed that so badly.
Not able to find it, however, means that F is not having a very fun time because of the fact that we normally see Twisted Fates like to rush that cooldown boot. Because it helps them so much to be able to have some extra cooldowns so they can get those ults off more often, it takes Twisted Fate a longer amount of time to bring his first item online. Super Mega Death Rocket connecting bottom side. Gordon Ramsay potentially in trouble here. Joestar into the bot side, able to pop the Ghost. Undertow will not connect, but now Flex Point has shown up. Gordon Ramsay in a lot of trouble. He will be brought down, and now Winter's Bite connected onto Flex Point, stunned up and brought down. It's going to be a double kill over onto Olaf as Joestar brings himself right back into the game and taking a lead now over Flex Point. 2-1, 68-54 in CS, 6-1 team score. Dynamic Strangers, 2 more kills.
I have to admit that coming into this, I was a little afraid we were going to see a 2-0 stop with Strangers getting a little bit on their back foot after that last game, but in no way is that the case. Strangers are just dominating this game. They've got a 2k gold lead. They're going to take this dragon. They're 5 kills up. At this point, their only problem is they have not managed to utilize their strength to take a turret, which is a bad sign in terms of closing this game out. They are going to have to move themselves in that direction.
Advantage continuing to pressure Insanity mid lane. Level 10 on this Lulu versus level 8 on Twisted Fate. He's barely a level above his bot laners, and Advantage is just making sure that his life is miserable in this mid lane.
Yeah, this is a joy to watch. I love games like this, these best of threes, where you have these teams that can play against each other. No one team taking an excessive advantage over the other, and just this back and forth is... I love it. I love it so much. It's why I love League of Legends. I have to admit, with this new meta of really decisive play and teams closing out games very quickly, we have seen a lack of the type of games that I like to see. But this very much the opposite of that. Not falling into that one team grabbing an advantage and then snowballing it really hard place that can be a little bit tedious to watch of, oh, look, they won another fight. This time, both teams showing so well.
Rammus with a really odd pickup coming in this game. Boots of Swiftness going to be picked up by him before he even completes that Cinder Hulk. Wants to make sure he's as fast as possible, rolling into these team fights and getting the taunts down onto those targets that matter.
Boots of Swiftness actually received an indirect buff this patch, whereas all the other boots got a massive cost bump. Boots of Swiftness did not. Now, these boots were good before that change. Honestly, I like them a lot more than the meta suggested. They have not been something that anyone has really picked up, but even so, they were very effective in certain scenarios, and this is not one of those scenarios, unfortunately.
Jungler 1v1
nice
topside going to turn into a 2v2 very quickly as Captain Monk takes a lot of damage. Flex point melting as well. Galzarian low, and he gets stomped into the ground. It's going to be another death onto Flex point. Galzarian walks away as Joestar comes over, keeps his ally alive, and now Apazin under pressure from this God tier Panth once again. Alistar able to get himself into the back line, pops the ultimate to break the stun applied by the concussive blows. Chris Brown, Senpai, and Apazin just farming up now. Chris Brown taking so much of that calling, interrupts it using that Glacial Fissure, and now Apazin and Chris Brown looking to turn this one around. They know the Alistar ult is down. They know he's not immune if they get into a fight with him, and now Advantage down here able to find plenty of damage onto these targets. Gordon Ramsay popping the heal to keep himself alive. 3 men bottom for Dynamic Strangers. This is their chance to push. They have the ability to dive this. Chris Brown Senpai has enough health that along with Wild Growth and Help Picks, they're easily able to have him soak quite a few shots from that turret. Gordon Ramsay doesn't have an entire bunch of mana to work with either. If they need to make this dive happen, they can, but they have to make sure they do it right. They're bringing Galzarian down here too. This is the plan, and it needs to happen right now if it's going to happen.
No, Advantage is backing off. He's going to go back to his mid lane, defend that. Do not overextend. Yes, they have an advantage, but it's not that much of an advantage. Diving 2 full health champions with Elise already on the bot side could have gone very, very badly for them, especially with some of their ults down the way they were. Chris Brown Senpai not having Braum's ult is a serious disadvantage in any dive scenario. Now, before I talked about there being a lack of damage coming out for this Strangers team, but with Lulu and Joestar both doing as well as they are, you've got 3 significant damage threats. This is a very good and safe position for them to be in, with all of these champions able to output the damage that they need in order to win these skirmishing fights. Advantage has just lived up to his name so much this game.
He's doing an absolutely amazing job. He's got Morello Namicon already completed as his first item, not going with that half defensive style item that we saw last time with the Athene's Unholy Grail. Instead, going for the very standard cooldowns, mana regeneration, AP item. You're going to be able to gimp a little bit of that healing too coming out from opponents. Helps against a champion like Jax, who relies a lot on Vamp to keep himself alive, if he stays alive at all. Insanity XXX threatened by Advantage. All he does is race car up, and Insanity has to back away because he knows just how much damage is heading his way from those Glitter Lances.
Yeah, and last game we were seeing a significant CS advantage for the YouTubers. However, this game, the CS advantages are almost all in the other direction. We do have Lucian with a bit of a CS advantage over the Jinx, which is exactly what you would expect to see in a Lucian versus Jinx matchup. But now the Rift Herald is going to the other side. Captain Monks wants to stop this. Why is that eye not being triggered?
Captain Monk looks like just going to try to get that ward and walk away, but walking away is not an option. Legs is not enough to get away from the wrath of Olaf. Joestar finds his 4th kill of this game. The Rift Herald about to drop as well, but it's going down very, very slowly. This thing
its eye isn't proccing. For some reason, we have a bug here where the eye is not proccing and doing that % health damage, but they still manage to take it out. That's a very, very unfortunate extra time expenditure for the Dynamic Strangers, but they get it anyway, and they get a kill as well. So plenty picked up for them. I don't think they'll be too upset about it.
One thing they have to be aware of is, despite the fact that they're ahead 8-1, they are not performing well in terms of playing the objective game. A team that's 8-1, you would expect to have a solid objective lead as well. All they're up is a single dragon. Turrets are tied 1-1, and it's actually about to be YouTubers taking the objective advantage as Gordon Ramsay and Insanity XXX pressure this bottom lane turret. A teleport in from Joestar will be able to keep that alive for the time being, but these guys really need to work on making things happen after they grab these kills. Joestar pops the ghost, he pops the ulti, and Gordon Ramsay is about to fall. Insanity XXX going to be able to gate himself away from this one. Captain Monk, God tier Panth, looking to collapse onto Absent, but there's the Wild Growth. There's the power of that Lulu. God tier Panth forced to run away from this one, pops the ult to keep himself alive. The burn is ticking, but it doesn't even matter. He's still going to be able to live through that one as Flex Point takes down the 2nd turret of the game for the YouTubers.
That was a very rough fight in the middle for the YouTubers. Those guys, they want to fight because they're so far in, but even so, the strength of Advantage and Apizan together is so much, and here they go, trying to take their second dragon, and it's going to be uncontested.
Dragon number 2 heads to the side of Dynamic Strangers. They are able to keep those under their belts, but still, turrets tied up 2-2. I want to see Dynamic Strangers make more objective-based plays, but at the same time, they've got to be so very careful. If they do what YouTubers did last game, if they make some ill-fated dive between two turrets play and throw their lead, they might not be able to get it back.
Much more sensible. They're getting the last tier 1, 3-man it down here. Perfectly safe for them to do. Shouldn't have any problems. Down goes the turret. Bunch of extra gold for Jinx.
Apizan and Chris Brown going to be able to back away after that one. Meanwhile, topside, talked about it in lobby, how if one of these top laners finds himself very far ahead of the other one's going to have his permission to get out from under the turret range. And that's exactly what we're seeing. 5-1 Joestar doesn't care about anything Flex Point's trying to do to him. He'll just beat him down if they get in a 1v1. So Joestar's just having to stay back, farm what he can get, and deal with Joestar. Flex Point's just having to deal with Joestar as it comes.
And I'm so pleased, on top of everything else, to finally see a skin knock Broloff off of the table. It was a funny joke, but frankly, listening to him all game can be a little irritating. This Marauder skin for Olaf is so fantastic. I love the way it looks, I love the way it plays. And it fits so well with the stomping he's been giving to the YouTubers. This straight-up mid-push, though.
Captain Monk in a lot of trouble, forced to flash away so those uppers don't get him. The follow-up flash from Apizan not going to be able to get himself a whole lot from that. But now we've got 5 members of Dynamic Strangers mid lane. Captain Monk has to go heal. He's not able to get himself to this defense immediately. This is the chance for YouTubers to put some damage on this turret and potentially threaten to break tier 2. Galzeran already in Powerball looking for something. If God tier Panth gets too close, he's going to be Rammus food as Advantage and Apizan hammer onto the turret and take their 4th of the game.
There's just no defense right now for YouTubers. They have a little bit of wave clear with the Twisted Fate, but it's not a huge amount. And so they find themselves in this situation of being unable to defend to the point where Lucian, Ramsey, he just doesn't even bother showing up to lane. He's going to take his red buff instead. Just let them have the tier 2 turret. We can't stop it anyway. That said, good of them to identify that, not dying under their tower and giving even more over to the Dynamic Strangers. However, when you find yourself in that position, which is where YouTubers are now, of having to make those calls, knowing that, oh, well, I guess we lose our tier 2 turret and we can't stop it, I guess we can just not give them more kills. That's a very unfortunate place to be in that only leaves you the option of your opponents messing up and not the option of you making plays.
Now, one thing to note between these AD carries is the fact that one thing that hurt Jinx going into the preseason is the fact that she's not a champion who really does a whole lot with Essence Reaver, and building Infinity Edge first, it used to not feel that great. Now it just feels just plain bad. Apizan finding a lot of damage on the Captain Monk, though, able to find the Super Mega Death Rocket, the collateral damage off the back of God Tier Pants. Will be able to blow that one up. The Alistar ultimate is pop Galzeran into the back of everyone. God Tier Pants melting away. Ultimate does not matter. Hamburger tonight, boys. Alistar goes down 2 for 0. Joestar in hot pursuit. Ghost is on. Ragnarok's on. And Insanity Triple X is about to be turned all the way off. Flashed over the wall to keep himself alive. Undertow will not connect. Galzeran will not find his way onto that target. But the score, now 1-11, Dynamic Strangers.
That was a 2 kill for nothing, and now they get to go in on this inhibitor turret. They aren't going to have the health for it. If they try to push this, they will almost certainly die. However, it's still good that they have that much pressure that they can even try that.
Good blocks coming out from Chris Brown Senpai, making sure that that culling doesn't do more than it should do. But what I was talking about is the fact that we're hitting around the 20-minute mark. We're getting a little bit past it, obviously. Apizan's going to start hitting a real power spike now because he's about to finish that second item in the Static Shiv. Infinity Edge is a much more multiplicative item than it ever was. Used to, the 80 carries would all rush Infinity Edge, and then they wouldn't really feel like they actually hit a good power spike until they got that Zeal Evolution as well. Now Infinity Edge is just the same item with less damage, so you even more need that Zeal Evolution off the back of it. Once Apizan finds that, he's going to feel a lot stronger in comparison to Gordon Ramsay, who hits his power
teleport
spike
coming in behind them. Oh, but it's
from
canceled.
the Essence Reaver.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but Olaf looking to make a play. Joestar trying to teleport in behind the enemy, but they back off too quickly, and he doesn't want to face 4 men by himself.
11-1, these guys have the ability to push advantages, but you have to respect the fact that they're recognizing that they can't just throw and do something potentially stupid. That's the worst thing you can do in League of Legends. You can tell in Pro League of Legends, games are decided by making less mistakes. You can't do these stupid overextension plays that end up throwing a great gold lead into an okay gold lead, because that's how you lose games. And these guys are doing a great job. Dynamic Strangers really impressing me with their ability to recognize what is too dangerous of a call. Obviously, there's an inherent risk in any play you're going to make, but they're successfully assessing what level of risk they should be taking and making sure they opt away from those dangerous scenarios.
So, on the topic, Apazin, what do you think his third item is going to be? What is the ideal lifesteal item for a Jinx right now? Or do you think he'll opt for that more last Whisper build path to deal with the Alistar and the Jax, even though the Jax isn't really a tank anymore? He's building that Gunblade Ginsu's option, which make him much more of a damage threat and very squishy.
I haven't seen anybody build Last Whisper since the changes. From what I've heard from most pro and upper level players, it just feels like garbage now. Because of the fact that you're only piercing the bonus armor, it just doesn't seem worth building. If I see a lifesteal item come out on Apazin, I expect to see a Bloodthirster.
Yeah, that would be the typical build. Jinx has...
From God Tier Pantheon behind, able to knock Apazin into the middle of everyone, and he's going to melt. This is the fight YouTubers need. Flex able to find the flash, able to find the stun. Advantage now, forced to run away. Still 1-for-0. Chris Bound flashes over the wall. Galzarian going to be the next one to fall. 2-for-0 so far. YouTubers find the play they're looking for. God Tier Panth with a God Tier initiation once again. On top of that, it's a 5v4. That's why this is so successful. Joestar topside wants to grab this turret before he backs out, having no minions nearby, giving it plenty of bonus armor, but he will be able to knock this one down and try to get away, able to find the undertow to knock down Flex Point, keep him slowed up enough to get out of town.
Yeah, Joestar making that up pretty much evens that fight out. 2 kills for a tier 2 turret is frankly a reasonably decent trade, all in all. And not only that, but they picked up the bottom tier 2 turret as well. So that's 2 tier 2s for 2 kills. Now, if the YouTubers can manage to pick up this Baron, that would make it a bit of an advantage in their favor, and I don't think Dynamic Strangers has any idea that this is going on, but they are going to go for Dragon, pick up their third one in response.
Great run call from YouTubers. They took the opportunity. Obviously, it's a play that can fail sometimes, but they realized that they just chased away Joestar. Joestar's very low. Everybody else had to back from the previous collapse that happened bottom side, and they figure, you know, nobody's going to expect us to go for this Baron at 25 minutes. We're down 3-11. So they go for it anyway. They make the unexpected play while Dynamic Strangers is busy at Dragon and Joestar's recalling. Great game sense, great heads-up play, knowing that was the right call. They grab a free Baron for themselves, and this might be how they get back in the game if Insanity Triple X doesn't collapse on 2 by Joestar. Super Mega Death Rocket connects, and Joestar able to find 1. Can he find 2? God Tier Pants trying to get himself away, but he's not going to be able to do that. That unbreakable will gets broken. Galzarian just sweeping up wards off to the side. They don't even need the little roly-poly guy. And now it's Dynamic Strangers up against their Baroned up opponents, or at least what's left of them, pushing this mid lane, about to knock down a turret.
You could see God Tier Panth wandering around there like, I know I'm supposed to be peeling, but I can't. He's immune to my CC. What am I going to do? Captain Monk gets caught.
Galzarian and Advantage and the rest of these Dynamic Stranger boys able to take him down. Inhibitor number 1 under pressure. 26 minutes in. Dynamic Strangers at the base, and they're looking for more.
That was a really swift shift there. You could see that the YouTubers got it into their heads that, oh, hey, we've got Baron now. This is our comeback. And God Tier Panth and Insanity Triple X were just a little bit too far up, and Joestar spotting that out and just knowing that he can go. Just pop his ult, ignore all of that CC, and get that immobile Twisted Fate down.
You said in lobby, I believe the words were, as an Olaf versus Elise in Twisted Fate, you just think, gimme, gimme. Well, that's exactly what Joestar's thinking as he goes at these guys. There's so much peel, so much stoppage for dive between Elise, between Jax, Twisted Fate, and especially Alistar, and Olaf doesn't care at all about it. The perfect champion to get into these backlines and make these plays happen. Insanity and Gordon Ramsay don't have any way to get away from this.
Last game, we saw both of these teams do fairly well, with YouTubers doing a little bit better and having drafted the superior team, getting them through that game and getting them the win. Now we're seeing a case where YouTubers where Dynamic Strangers have drafted the superior team against YouTubers. They have that perfect Olaf into that Twisted Fate Elise counter with no real option from the Alistar to be able to stop him. People have said it before, Lulu Olaf. If you have Lulu on Olaf's side, Olaf is absolutely amazing. And if you have Lulu against Olaf, then Olaf becomes kind of a non-threat. Such a good job by this Strangers team to pick up both of those and make them work too. I mean, this has totally been the Alistar or the Olaf and Lulu show, with both of them destroying their lanes and destroying in the fights.
Flexpoint and Joestar 1v1 topside. The Ragnarok is dropped. The healing comes down, and Flexpoint trying to kite him away until that Ragnarok ends at least. But Joestar just gets stronger as the fight goes on. A couple more hits are going to be able to finish him off, and the Sterax gauge pops to make sure that Flexpoint has no chance of winning that 1v1. Now it's Dynamic Strangers able to force that 4v1 split push with their main split pusher of YouTubers already dead. God tier Pants able to find that initiation pulverized with the flash. Absent thrown under the turret. The Wild Growth keeping him alive. The flash away gets him back to safety, but Chris Brown Senpai taking a lot of damage from that beam turret. They managed to take down Galzarin. Insanity and Gordon Ramsay still both alive. The Super Mega Death Rocket will not connect on anything of value, but it will be able to take down that support one more time. Apazin taking more damage from that beam, but not even caring about it. They've got to try to break more and more of this base. Joestar is keeping Captain Monk busy topside. Advantage is almost out of mana. The other two are almost out of health, but you can tell they want this turret.
I'd like to draw attention to the fact that Flexpoint, they're still fighting over and over and over again. Chris Bound a little bit in trouble there.
Apazin under a lot of pressure. Flexpoint from behind. The TP is here, and Advantage is about to get shut down as well. Big overstay from Dynamic Strangers. This could be the mistake that sets them down a very bad path. Chris Brown Senpai going to be caught out now. That's 3 kills for free that should have never been on the table.
Serious overconfidence there by the Dynamic Strangers. With Apazone was what, like 20% health and 10% mana? That should just not be a situation where you stick around and where your primary carry is sitting in that spot and Lulu does not have her ult, and neither does Olaf. Unfortunately for the YouTubers, even that advantage still leaves the Dynamic Strangers with a significant advantage over their opponents.
16-7. They've got 9 kills up. They've got 4 They've got 3 dragons up, of which their opponents still have 0. Despite all those things I just listed, they're barely ahead 4,000 gold. YouTubers are doing a good job of making sure they don't fall too far behind, and it's creating this system of constant pressure for Dynamic Strangers. One big mishap, and this is back to anybody's game.
There is that for sure. And it should be pointed out that earlier in that fight between Joestar and Flexpoint, Joestar is 7-1-3, was 6-1-3 at the time. The Jax was 1-2-2, and or actually I think at that point he was actually 0-2-0 or something like that. And he was down 80 CS, and he still almost killed the Olaf. I mean, that's how strong Jax with Ginsu's is right now. He's just such an unstoppable beast.
Flexpoint able to grab his allies and pursue some damage onto Joestar. Joestar will be able to get away from this one, though. Dragon going to be spawning for the 4th time in the game in about 5 seconds, so Joestar just doing what he can to drag as much attention top lane as he can possibly muster. The rest of YouTubers will not be able to get in position to stop this Dragon, and this is going to bring Aspect online here 6 minutes from now. This is now something that YouTubers have to be very conscious of and working to play around unless they want to deal with that true damage burn.
Not only that, but Baron is up in 30 seconds, and that would be a great thing for this Dynamic Strangers comp to fight over. They've got such a good comp for making that fight. Oh, Flexpoint.
Flexpoint loses his Counter-Strike, and that's Joestar's signal to go right on in. Able to find Undertow a couple different times, but he realizes that Flexpoint is fighting him, which is a big red flag that he needs to get the hell out of Dodge because the rest of the team is going to show up. And you know, we've got Galzarin on this red team that has the potential to activate Aspect soon. Ramus has a ridiculous amount of synergy with that true damage burn, considering he does damage to whoever attacks him, and he does that huge AoE with Tremors. That's going to be so much burn piled onto everyone. It's going to be crazy, but the fight breaks out, and now it's Chris Brown Senpai taking a lot of damage from that calling, but a good counter retaliation all comes out. Chris Brown trying to keep himself alive as Flexpoint looks for a stun on to Apazin, but will not be able to find it. Advantage taking a lot of damage from the Sanity Triple X off to the side, but that's not going to have any fruit either. Joestar off to the side, trying to keep himself alive. He will drop to Captain Monk, but it's going to be a 2-for-1 so far in favor of Dynamic Strangers. Insanity Triple X over the wall, keeps himself alive with a flash, but he's got 100 HP, and he's backing on top of a ward. They don't send Galzerin after him, though. They say, I don't care about Twisted Fate. He doesn't matter. We want Baron.
And they're dropping it so fast. I mean, Jinx is the champion to do that. Beef her up with a Lulu buff, and then she just goes to town on it. Put those chompers down, try to get the God Tier Panth out, but unfortunately, he's right there. He's on to advantage, who gets the heal.
The heal doing a great job. Keep Apazin and Advantage both ready to fight this Alistar. God Tier Panth thought he could come in, potentially grab that snipe onto Advantage, but instead Apazin says, no thank you, we're not going to risk this. We're not going to have Advantage die for no reason and lose a minute of pressure off this Baron. We're just going to pop the heal, better safe than sorry. God Tier Panth goes down, 30 seconds on him. He'll be back up in time for anything to actually happen, but now there's an open inhibitor mid lane for this 4 people with Baron team on Dynamic Strangers to push. After that, they can rotate back down bottom or up to top, whatever they want to do. This is their chance to really shatter this base for YouTube.
Now, Jinx has opted for a no lifesteal build so far. That was the Static Shiv, the Rapid Fire Cannon, and now she's got the Quicksilver Sash and the Last Whisper to make sure she can shoot through anything tanky that gets in her way, as well as survive any CC that's put down onto her. A lot of these catches coming out from the YouTubers are stuns, which Quicksilver Sash is so good against.
Now they're taking out Chris Brown Senpai, trying to keep Flex Point off of Apps, and Advantage doing what he can as well. The Jax poses such a threat despite being as behind as he is. It doesn't matter though. God Tier Panth drops, Flex Point drops, the inhibitor drops. It's a 5 versus 3. This, Dynamic Strangers, this is your chance. Win this game. Chris Brown and Joestar onto the Nexus turret. Nexus turret number 1 about half HP. Nexus turret number 2 is the same. Galzerin and Absent able to bring down Nexus turret number 1. Nexus turret number 2 gonna die in sync with it. Nexus is at 20%. Game number 2, Dynamic Strangers. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for game number 3.
Too much we have seen the 2-0 and watched teams get utterly run over by their opponents. This, as you said, ladies and gentlemen, is a real fight.
This is turning into a great series of games. Stick around, everybody. We're going to be live in the lobby, Champion Select. We saw how important the draft has been in both of these games. Team 1, YouTubers won the draft. Game 1, YouTubers won the draft. They won the game. Game 2, the draft went much more in the favor of Dynamic Strangers. They turn around and pick a win. The draft is going to be big. Stick around. It'll be live in a couple minutes. It's Game 3.
miss those nights when we were younger, and we would never sleep. So let's forget about tomorrow and live for tonight while we're free.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all you guys spamming memes in the Twitch chat, this is the moment we've been waiting for. Game number 3 in this best of 3 series. It's Dynamic Strangers back in blue versus YouTubers Are Us over in the red. I'm Captain Flowers here for the play-by-play, joined once again by Fury Golem on the color commentary. Fury, game number 3, do or die, right here, right now. Your thoughts?
Well, right off, they're like, no, Advantage, you can't have Lulu. That's not allowed anymore. That was ridiculous, and Insanity isn't putting it up with it anymore. Get rid of that guy. Get the Soraka off the table, fairly typical. Again, the Anivia ban coming out second time in a row from the Strangers, even though they're the ones who played it first game. A little bit unusual, and again, the LeBlanc ban. They don't like either of those mid laners, and they don't want to see them.
Anivia, Rek'Sai, LeBlanc, Lulu, Soraka. That Lulu, last game, played so very well by Advantage, has been taken off the table. They don't want to deal with that sick 1v2 outplay again. That sort of thing is the kind of thing that haunts you in your memories when you decide, I want to go to bed early tonight, get some extra sleep, and you stay up thinking for too long and not able to actually get any extra sleep at all. That's the kind of stuff that creeps into your brain, that 1v2 outplay right there, wondering, how did I let Lulu kill both of us? How did that happen? How it happened was some crazy mid lane play coming out from Advantage. It's an awesome sight to see. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. The Zac that was banned out both games, now picked up by Dynamic Strangers.
First pick, get that guy. Now, I'm a little confused about why they're fighting over this guy so hard. Zac is a great champion. He has many, many uses, and one of his many uses is that you can first pick him and then work him into a bunch of different comps without showing too much. There's no real hard counter to the Zac play. However, what you have to understand is Zac is a champion that's relatively easy to play around if you've got good reflexes. If you're on the opponent team and you have ways to get out from under a Zac E, Zac's E is so much of his kit that if he doesn't land it, he's about as useless as a Blitzcrank who can't land his Qs. That ability has to come in, has to be landed, and it's so easy to stop it in a number of different ways. Get out from underneath it, any dash can do that. Or just walk out from underneath it. If it's a long enough slingshot, it takes him longer to land the longer the slingshot goes, and so you can just walk out from underneath. And alternatively, any stun, knock up, anything that stops him mid-flight will stop him from landing and prevent that ability from going through. We are seeing the Olaf again, and the Kench. The Olaf, the Kench, and the Zac. I'm not sure how well this team synergizes, but they've certainly got the memes.
Holy hell, that front line. Dynamic Strangers creating more than a brick. This is like a brick wall where each individual brick is also a wall of smaller bricks. These guys are going to be so difficult to get through for YouTubers Are Us that I fully expect to see another late game carry come out for Apizan.
He has to. And you got that Kench to gobble up your carry and run away with. So you have to have something there, but they don't have the Lulu this time. So running a really immobile carry like Jinx, so many times that Alistar play from the YouTubers last game would have been the death of Apizan on Jinx if not for Advantage's Lulu bringing so many shields and health bars to that champion. So he needs to pick something a little bit safer this time. Yeah, there is the safety of the Kench, but Kench is only one champion. He can only do so much. He is not the uber peel that is Lulu. So in this particular case, what do you figure Apizan could run that would be a really good hyper carry, but at the same time safe enough to play against this other team?
I was actually just about to say Tristana. It's very similar to Jinx. It's incredibly similar to what we saw with last game with the pushing power, with the attack speed and long-range scaling, but it has the ability to get out of the way. Ashe, on the other hand, does not have the ability to get away. That's going to be a pick that if locked in, they're going to have to be very careful about, and especially against a Fiora, I really, really, really don't like. I think that if Ashe is ultimately what Apizan locks in, they're going to lose this draft.
I'm concerned about that for sure. Do you like the Orianna pickup? She's a great champion to play with an engagey bruisery comp. But the Ashe, oh man, the Ashe. I feel like there's a total lack of safety for Apizan coming in here. He's going to have to do a much better job of playing safe this game than he did last game and not put himself nearly so far forward.
Even if he doesn't put himself far forward, even if he's playing very safe, he's playing into an Elise and a Fiora. Fiora is this champion who just 3-shots 80 carries in the late game and has this amazing ability to riposte quick instances of ridiculous CC or damage, kind of like if a champion had the ability to shoot out a big arrow that would stun you and do damage, it's like she could dodge that. I mean, Apizan doesn't have to worry about that because he doesn't have a move like that or anything, but it's something that you would have to consider. And Flex Point is going to be a massive threat towards Apizan and something that the entire team of Dynamic Strangers is going to have to work together to protect him from.
Now, one of the things that people underestimate is the ability to double engage. You hit the Ashe arrow, the follow-up slingshot from Zac becomes even more powerful because there's just no way he can miss it. And so you get to layer that CC very, very well. I mean, in fact, while Zac's ability is good engage, it's much, much better as secondary engage, coming in off of the top of like a Leona ultimate or an Ashe ultimate or something like that that can lock the enemy down at range. A Morgana binding, any of those things set up a Zac E so very, very well. However, this is also a Zed. You've got the Fiora, you've got the Zed, and for the Zac engage, they've got the Fiora riposte, and you've got the Sivir spell shield. Both of those things on the primary people who you would want to land a Zac slingshot on makes it very, very hard for this team that Dynamic Strangers has drafted to engage. I mean, they're going to be pretty reliant on getting Olaf in there first and then coming in on top of that. And for that to happen, the Olaf needs to be ahead or he needs to build tanky. And really, with this comp, they want him to build damage. So I feel like with the Ashe pick, they've put themselves in a bit of a corner that's forced the Olaf to play in a way that's very dangerous.
You know how you get out of a corner, Fury? You completely ignore one item because you don't have to build those kinds of stats, which is exactly what they're going to be able to do against Fiora, Zed, and Sivir. There's no matter.